Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a simple question. Have you ever walked into a room, poured your heart into something, and still felt invisible? We've all been there. At work, in relationships, in friendships, where we give and give and give, and yet somehow we are still not seen, not heard, not valued. And in those moments, something inside us whispers, why am I not enough? But what if I told you the problem isn't you? What if the secret to dealing with people who don't value you isn't about changing them, but about understanding you? Today, we're not here to point fingers. We're here to discover a powerful shift from seeking validation to owning our worth. Because once you understand why you deserve to be valued, everything changes. Not just how others treat you, but how you treat yourself. We grow up in a world that teaches us early on to look outward for approval. Good grades mean a gold star. A compliment means we're doing something right. A like on social media, proof that we matter, at least for the moment. And slowly, almost without realizing it, our sense of self-worth becomes tangled up in the reactions of others. But there comes a point in life where that system starts to fail us, when we find ourselves trying harder and harder to be seen, to be heard, to be appreciated, only to feel more invisible than ever. The truth is, when you don't know your own worth, you will chase validation like it's oxygen. You'll give parts of yourself away hoping someone else will tell you who you are. But no amount of praise, attention, or external affirmation can make up for what you haven't first discovered within. Knowing your worth isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's the quiet confidence that says, I may not be perfect, but I have value, and I don't need your permission to believe that. That kind of inner knowing is powerful. Because when you know your worth, rejection doesn't break you. It reveals what's not aligned with you. When you know your worth, silence from others no longer feels like a threat, but a space where you can hear your own voice more clearly. The challenge, though, is this: knowing your worth requires solitude. It requires reflection. And often, it requires undoing years of noise telling you that your value depends on your performance, your appearance, your productivity, or your popularity. You start realizing that your worth isn't defined by how others treat you. It's defined by how you decide to treat yourself. That shift begins with one core believing: you are inherently valuable. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you show up in this world. It all matters. And no one else gets to determine that for you. Think about it. If you don't walk into a room knowing who you are, you'll spend the whole time trying to become what others want you to be. You'll twist yourself into shapes that don't fit, speak words that don't reflect your truth, and wonder why it still doesn't feel like enough. But when you start with your worth, when it comes from within, you can walk into any space without needing to perform, impress, or conform. You're not there to be accepted. You're there to contribute. This is the foundational truth. Until you define your worth for yourself, the world will keep trying to define it for you. And the world, quite frankly, is inconsistent. One day you'll be celebrated, the next forgotten. One day you'll be praised, the next criticized. But your worth, that doesn't have to move. It can be the anchor in the chaos, the calm in the noise. So ask yourself, who are you when no one's watching? What do you believe about yourself when there's no applause, no spotlight, no feedback? That answer, that deep knowing, is where your worth begins. And once you've grounded yourself in that truth, you stop needing people to validate you. You start showing up in places, not to get something from them, but to give something of yourself authentically, fully, and unapologetically. Because the most powerful people in any room are not the loudest or the most liked. They're the ones who no longer need to be liked in order to stand tall. That's the secret to know your worth, and the world will start responding to the standard you've already set. There's a hard truth many of us don't want to admitting: we teach others how to treat us, not with our words, but with what we tolerate. Every time we let someone cross a boundary without consequence, every time we stay silent when disrespected, we're sending a silent message: this is okay. You can keep doing this. The reality is people are always observing us, not just what we say, but how we show up, how we respond. And over time, patterns form. If you constantly say yes to things that drain you, people will come to expect your availability. If you continue giving without receiving, people will assume you don't mind being the one who always sacrifices. It's not necessarily malicious, it's just human behavior. People take the path of least resistance. And if you don't standard, they'll set a set one for you. It starts small. Maybe someone interrupts you repeatedly and you smile and move on. Maybe someone consistently takes you for granted and you excuse it because you understand them. Maybe someone disrespects your time, your energy, or your emotions, and you rationalize it hoping they'll change. But here's the thing: people rarely change behavior that benefits them, especially if they've never been challenged to. You are not responsible for other people's actions, but you are responsible for the boundaries you enforce. Boundaries are not walls, they're gates. They're not about shutting people out, but about deciding who gets to come closer, and under what conditions. They are not signs of selfishness, they are declarations of self-respect. When you begin to set boundaries, some people will push back, not because you're doing something wrong, but because they were comfortable when you didn't have any. That discomfort is not your problem to fix. It's a sign that you're starting to honor yourself, and that's always going to create friction with those who benefited from your lack of clarity. But here's the empowering part. The moment you stop tolerating disrespect, you raise the standard, you shift the dynamic, and you start attracting people who see you, who hear you, who value, not because you demand it, but because you live it. You don't have to fight for respect when you carry yourself with it. This truth applies in every area of life, at work, in friendships, in family, in love. If someone consistently takes without giving, it's up to you to stop feeding that imbalance. If someone's words consistently cut, it's up to you to say, that's not acceptable. If someone diminishes your worth, your dreams, your presence, it's up to you to decide whether they get continued access to your life. You are not a victim of other people's behavior when you realize you have the power to choose what you allow. That choice might be uncomfortable. It might require letting go, speaking up, walking away, but the cost of not doing it is far greater. The slow erosion of your self-esteem, your peace, your sense of self. The most powerful transformation happens when you stop asking, why are they treating me this way? And start asking, why am I allowing it? That question is not a blame game. It's a doorway to personal power. Because once you realize that your energy, your time, your love, your presence are not free for alls, that they are sacred and should be treated as such, you start moving differently. And people start treating you differently. Respect isn't demanded. It starts with you. When you value yourself deeply, fully, unapologetically, the world has no choice but to take notice. So, if you want others to treat you with care, with kindness, with respect, start by treating yourself that way, set the standard, and stick to it. There comes a time when the most powerful thing you can do for yourself isn't to explain, argue, or fight harder for someone to see your worth. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of respect for yourself. Distance is often misunderstood. People think it means you're being cold, unforgiving, or holding a grudge. But real distance, the kind that comes from awareness, is not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting your peace. It's about choosing not to stay in environments that chip away at yourself, worth one subtle moment at a time. Sometimes the people closest to you won't value you, not because you don't deserve it, but because they've grown used to the version of you that expected less, the version of you that tolerated more. When you evolve, when you begin to realize what you deserve, not everyone evolves with you. And that's okay. Distance is how you make room for growth. It's how you create space between who you were and who you're becoming. We are conditioned to hold on to relationships, to roles, to people even when they hurt us, because we're afraid of what will happen if we let go. We fear judgment. We fear being misunderstood. We fear being alone. But clinging to what doesn't serve you is far lonelier than walking alone for a while on the path toward wholeness. It takes courage to distance yourself, especially when you're emotionally invested, especially when it's someone you care about. But self-respect often demands that courage, because every time you choose to stay close to what depletes you, you send yourself a message. My peace is not a priority. And over time, that message becomes belief. Distance doesn't have to mean a dramatic goodbye. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just fewer calls, less emotional investment, a shift in how much access someone has to your life. Sometimes it's mental or emotional space, letting go of the need to fix someone, prove something, or wait for an apology that may never come. Creating distance doesn't make you unkind. In fact, it's one of the kindest things you can do for yourself and the other person. Because when you're constantly in survival mode, trying to maintain connections that don't honor you, you're not showing up as your best self. And you're not giving others the opportunity to meet the real you, the one who knows her worth, honors her time, and protects her energy. The truth is, not everyone deserves access to every part of you. Your heart, your time, your vulnerability, these are sacred things. And distance is how you make sure they're not carelessly handled. It's how you remind yourself that just because someone wants your presence doesn't mean they deserve your closeness. Letting go isn't a loss when the cost of holding on is your self-respect. You can love someone and still choose space. You can wish them well and still walk away. You can be at peace with someone's place in your past and still know they don't belong in your present. Distance allows clarity. It allows healing. It gives you room to breathe, to rebuild, to refocus. It gives you the power to say, I choose me, not in a selfish way, but in a necessary way. And when you start choosing yourself like that, everything changes. Your relationships improve, your confidence grows, your peace expands. Because you're no longer shrinking to fit someone else's comfort, you're rising to meet your own standard. Distance is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's strength. And most importantly, it's a profound act of self-respect. There will be times in your life when you're overlooked, underestimated, or outright dismissed. You'll show up fully, give your best, and still feel like it wasn't seen or appreciated. And in those moments, the temptation is strong to believe that the way others treat you is a reflection of your worth. But that's a lie we must unlearn. Not being valued doesn't mean you're not valuable. Think about gold buried underground. If no one knows it's there, does that make it any less precious? Of course not. Its value doesn't depend on being recognized. It's inherent. The same is true for you. Your worth isn't diminished because someone failed to see it. Their blindness doesn't define your brilliance. We live in a world that often measures value by visibility. How popular you are, how many followers you have, how loud your presence is. But true value runs deeper than surface-level recognition. It lives in your character, your heart, your integrity. Qualities that may go unnoticed by some, but are priceless nonetheless. The danger of tying your value to other people's opinions is that those opinions will always change. One moment you might be admired, the next moment ignored. If you let that dictate how you feel about yourself, you'll be on a constant emotional roller coaster, always questioning your worth based on external reactions. You are not a product to be appraised by others. You are a person with an internal compass, a unique story, and a voice that matters, even when it's met with silence. Sometimes the people who don't value you simply lack the capacity to. They might be too focused on themselves. They might only recognize value in what they can use, take, or control. Or they may just not be in a place where they're capable of seeing someone else clearly. That has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. But here's the key. Your job is not to convince anyone of your worth. Your job is to know it so deeply that when someone doesn't see it, you don't question yourself. You question their perspective. You don't water yourself down to fit their glass. You don't shrink to make them comfortable. You stand in your truth even if no one applauds. The strongest people aren't those who are constantly validated. They're the ones who keep showing up with love, integrity, even when the world is silent. They're the ones who build their self-worth from within, brick by brick, not because someone told them they're enough, but because they decided they are. You may not be for everyone, and that's okay. Not everyone has the eyes to see your value. Not everyone has the heart to hold space for who you are. But that doesn't make you less. It makes you selective about who gets access to you. And that's a powerful place to be. The truth is, your value is not up for debate. It is not conditional. It is not based on how useful you are to others. It's rooted in your existence. You matter because you are. You matter even when you're not chosen. Even when you're not praised, even when you're not acknowledged, you are still enough. So the next time someone fails to see your value, don't chase, don't explain, and don't shrink. Instead, take a breath, stand tall, and remind yourself their inability to recognize my worth does not define it, because you don't become more valuable when someone finally notices you. You've always been valuable, and the right people, the ones who see you clearly, will never need to be convinced. One of the hardest lessons in life is this: you cannot change people. No matter how much you love them, no matter how clear you are, no matter how deeply you believe they could be better, change is a choice, and it's one they have to make for themselves. We spend so much energy trying to get others to understand us, appreciate us, or treat us differently. We explain, we justify, we give second, third, and fourth chances. We hold on to potential, waiting for the day someone finally becomes who we know they could be. But potential is not reality. And the longer we engage with who someone might become, the more we deny the reality of who they are right now. Trying to change someone is exhausting. It drains your spirit and traps you in a cycle of frustration and disappointment. You start to feel responsible for their behavior, like if you could just say it the right way, or love them a little harder, they'd finally see. But the truth is, you are not responsible for another person's growth. You are only responsible for your own. You can inspire people, but you can't force them. You can set an example, but you can't control what someone chooses to do with it. And that's not failure. That's freedom. Freedom begins when you stop trying to rewrite someone else's story and start taking ownership of your own. And a huge part of that ownership is deciding who gets to be in your life, who gets your energy, who gets your attention. Because while you can't change others, you can choose whether or not to engage. You get to choose who you allow into your space. You get to choose how close someone gets. You get to choose when enough is enough. not from a place of anger, but from a place of clarity. We often hold on to toxic or unfulfilling relationships because we believe walking away means giving up. But letting go isn't giving up. It's recognizing your power. It's understanding that engaging with someone who refuses to meet you halfway doesn't prove your strength, it drains it. It's okay to say, I love you, but I can't keep doing this. It's okay to say, I see your pain, but I won't let it become my prison. It's okay to say, I've tried enough, and now I choose peace. Because every time you choose to engage with someone who disrespects you, dismisses you, or drains you, you're saying yes to chaos and no to calm. You're saying yes to their comfort and no to your own boundaries. And over time, that takes a toll, not just on your well-being, but on your self-respect. Choosing who you engage with isn't about judgment. It's about discernment. You're not saying, I'm better than you. You're saying, I'm no longer available for relationships that hurt more than they heal. When you accept that you can't change others, you begin to focus on what you can, changing your choices, your reactions, your boundaries. You take your power back, and that's where growth begins. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. And that's not a loss. It's a clearing, a necessary space making for the people who will value without conditions, who will walk beside you without needing to be pulled forward. So stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. Stop waiting for someone else to become who you need them to be. Instead, become the person who no longer needs to engage with what drains you. Choose people who choose you, not with words, but with consistent action, respect, and presence. Because at the end of the day, peace isn't found in changing others. It's found in choosing yourself. There's something deeply human about wanting closure. We crave that final conversation, that sincere apology, that moment where the person who hurt us finally understands the damage they've caused. We imagine that healing will come the moment they acknowledge our pain. But here's the hard truth sometimes: the apology you're waiting for will never come. And if your healing depends on it, you may stay broken far longer than you need to. Healing is not something someone else can give you. It's not something you earn by being hurt enough or patient enough. Healing is a decision, a choice. And most importantly, it's your responsibility. It's easy to feel like we can't move forward until the person who hurt us makes it right. But when you give someone that kind of power, you give them control over your peace. You attach your freedom to someone else's willingness to grow, to see, to care. And the reality is, some people won't. Not because you weren't worthy of an apology, but because they lack the emotional maturity, self-awareness, or integrity to give it. That's not your burden to carry. You do not need someone to say, I'm sorry, in order to begin releasing the weight they left behind. You don't need their words to validate your experience. Your pain is real. Your feelings are valid. And your healing doesn't need their permission. Taking responsibility for your healing doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you excuse it or forget it. It simply means you choose not to let their actions have the final say in your story. You refuse to stay stuck in a cycle of waiting, hoping, replaying, and wondering. You start taking steps, small daily steps, toward your own peace, regardless of whether or not they ever take accountability. Because the truth is, healing isn't about them. It's about you. It's about how you treat yourself in the aftermath. It's about the thoughts you feed yourself when no one else is around. It's about whether you continue to speak to yourself like a victim or start speaking to yourself like someone who's reclaiming their power. Forgiveness, too, becomes part of this process, not for their sake, but for yours. Not because they asked for it, but because you deserve to be free of the bitterness they left behind. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconnection. It means you've decided to stop bleeding for someone who isn't even in the room anymore. Yes, there will be grief. Grief for what you went through, for what you deserved but didn't receive. Let yourself feel that, let yourself mourn it. But don't stay there. Don't build a home in the place they broke you. Build a bridge, instead a path forward that belongs to you and no one else. You are not weak for being wounded, but you are incredibly strong for choosing to heal without closure, for deciding that your peace matters more than your pride, more than their recognition, more than waiting for justice that may never come. This is how you grow. This is how you rise, not with their apology echoing in your ears, but with your own voice telling you, I deserve better and I'm going to create it for myself. You owe yourself that freedom, that peace, that future. So stop waiting at the door of someone who's never coming back with what you need. Turn around, walk toward the light of your own healing. And know this, the most powerful closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. Because healing was never about who hurt you. It was always about how deeply you choose to love yourself in the aftermath.